Today's edition of MacVoices is supported by Linode. You can build it on Linode. Get started today with $100 in free credit for MacVoices listeners and viewers at linode.com/MacVoices. Welcome to MacVoices Live on Facebook. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, tonight the Zoom room is open. We had it closed last week for a couple panel discussions on the Apple announcement, but the Zoom room is wide open. So please check the chat on Facebook, and I'll be posting the information there. You can come in and be part of the show as well. That means you get to be part of the show with our featured guest, Mr. Brett Terpstra. Brett, welcome. It's good to see you.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you so much for doing this. This is a little bit different for us, the live thing, but it's turning into something I think that is fun, and I'm enjoying, and I'm having a good time with it. So hopefully others are.
I don't know how you stay up so late. This is like almost bedtime for me.
Yeah. Wait a minute.
I'm not
7 p.m. here.
Yeah. I got to think about the time zone thing here. Wait a minute.
Central time.
7
and of
p.m.
course,
is start winding down for bed. I'm 65 years old. What do you want from me?
And David Ginsburg is back with us again. David, good to see you. Thanks so much.
Good to see you. Great to be here.
Although I'm glad that your picture, at least on my screen, and my picture are not together, because between our shirts, I think we might explode.
Oh, my orange.
Yeah.
You should have your orange on 1 week.
That's why I went neutral, just to kind of keep things what's the opposite of explosive? Not non-explosive.
Implosive. Yeah. No, that's not right. Yeah. Whatever.
Stable.
So stable. There you go. Stable. That works. I'm not sure anybody's going to accuse this group of stability. So, Brett, the first thing I wanted to touch on, though, and we can bounce all over the place, and if the things you want to talk about, but you released, I guess, is it fair to say it's an application?
Yeah.
Called Bunch?
Yeah.
And I was highly intrigued by this. I like this idea, and I wanted you to introduce us to it a little bit.
Okay, so what it does, you've seen other apps that do it. It's a batch application launcher. But the thing about Bunch is that it's controlled by text files. You just create a text file and you put in a list of applications. And when the name of that text file shows up in the Bunch menu, you run it, and all of those applications will launch. In addition to that, it can run things like turning on Do Not Disturb. It can control your audio inputs and outputs and set volume levels. It can change your desktop wallpapers. I use it to get ready for screencasting or podcasting. And it can quit apps. When you close the Bunch, you can have anything at launch quit when you switch to a different Bunch or when you close out the Bunch. And you can have it run with single Bunch mode. So when you open one Bunch, it'll close any apps that aren't shared with the previous Bunch and like allow you to move contexts. And basically the result of doing a lot of stuff with AppleScript and eventually deciding this would make more sense as an application.
Okay, I want to get back to that for a second. First, I want to welcome Brittany Smith to the show. Brittany, good to see you as always. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. So I get the launching of the multiple applications, and that's something that's super useful. And if folks haven't figured that out, whether it's with your utility or some of the others, that's amazingly useful to be able to sit down to a task, know you're going to need 5 applications, and just click and go. But if I heard you right, then I can decide I want to close one Bunch before opening another?
Yeah. So if you had a set of apps that you used for podcasting, but then a set of apps that you used for writing a report, when you were done podcasting and ready to write your report, you would just pick the new Bunch and it would close all of your podcasting apps. Unless in the text file, you can tell it to ignore apps when it closes, but unless you said that, it would close your podcasting apps and open your report writing apps. And if you were like switching to screencasting and maybe there were a couple of apps in common, it wouldn't quit the apps that would also be open for screencasting, just the ones that were unique to the podcasting Bunch.
Got it, I think. Okay. So, I mean, we all know you're a scripting guru. And when you say text file, I start to say, am I going to be expected to code things
No, it's literally like if you just want to launch 5 applications, you just write the name of 5 applications, 1 on each line, and hit save, and you're done. There is a bunch of syntax. Like if you want to turn do not disturb on, in parentheses, you write DND on, and that's a line. And that will turn do not disturb on. And that'll automatically, when that bunch closes, it'll turn do not disturb back off. So there's syntax, and it can get a little more complicated than just writing the name of an application. But if you wanted to launch pages, you would just write pages. And then if you wanted it to open a specific file, you would put a dash on the next line and then the path to the file, and it would open that file in pages. So there's a very simple syntax to it.
And yeah, you say simple syntax, and listen, for you that's used to thinking in these terms and using this, it's sure it's simple, but for the rest of us, so is there a tutorial or a set of commands that?
If you go to brettterpstra.com/project/bunch, there's an example bunch file that covers like all of the basic syntax, and then I've documented every feature thoroughly on that page. I mean, it got bigger than I planned for it to. So having all of the documentation on one web page, you have to jump around a bit if you just want to figure out how to do one thing. But if you want to get into it, it's worth a quick read through the whole thing. Okay. I may eventually turn that into a help file with sections and indexes, but it got out of hand.
Yeah, but putting on a web page, I don't know. I mean, I don't know that having, especially if you're distributing online, is there anything wrong with having a web page as opposed to a text file? Not for the bunch, but as documentation. I mean, I think that makes perfect sense because you can make it so much more rich if you want.
Right, and you can keep it more up to date. Like you can make changes instantly without someone having to update the app to get the new help file. But there are benefits to using Apple's help system that even Apple seems to have gotten away from. But like when you hit Command-Shift ? In any application, it takes you to a search pane. And if you type in that search pane, it'll search if that app has a help document, it'll search that app's help and take you right to a topic that you want to know about. And you can't do that if all your help documentation is online.
Yeah, that's true, but I guess I'm not sure who I might be criticizing here, so I apologize in advance if I offend someone. But I find it extremely frustrating that I have a help menu that gives me no help in certain apps.
A lot of apps.
I mean, it ends up giving me help for the Finder when that's not what I was looking for, and now I've got nothing.
And while Apple says that help files are part of their preferred user interface design, they don't really promote it anymore, and they haven't released tools for building help books for years now. And most applications don't create help books anymore, which means the help menu stays empty and you just get system help from it.
Yeah.
About half of my apps make good use of the help menu, and the other half just sends you to the web page.
Well, listen, even if it did that, I mean, I wouldn't find that objectionable. Yeah. I would understand that I don't have the specific answer to my specific query, but at least you've sent me somewhere that I can look for it, and then maybe I might have to research on search on the website. But at least I'd be somewhere. But so often, for some apps, it gives you nothing. It doesn't point you to a web page. It doesn't do anything. And
it probably won't shock you to know that I have a script system that will turn a bunch of markdown files into a valid help book that will populate the help menu for an app. If you ever want to document, one of your own apps.
I mean, good examples we're using. Good example of what we're using right now, Zoom. You go to the help and try to search something, it searches for it, It's searching for the stuff in the system. It's a system help. You click Help Center, then it brings it to you to the Zoom's website for help. So it seems like a lot of
doesn't
apps
believe in the menu bar.
Right.
Sorry, Brittany.
Zoom doesn't believe in the menu bar. We've been fighting about it for a while.
Well, that's. I have mixed feelings about that. And I guess I will give Zoom a little more of a pass than I would some folks because their overall interface is pretty easy to understand, and at least for the basic features. But Brett, I want to go back. If I wanted to, you said if I wanted to build this to document my own app, you don't mean an app that I author. You mean an app that somebody else hasn't bothered to?
Oh no, you would right. It would be for an app that you authored.
Okay, that's because I was
hypothetically you.
That would be crazy to document someone else's app.
I was anxious to hear how that was going to work, Brett. So Bunch is out now. Is it a work in progress, or as if anything is not a work in progress? But is it usable for mere mortals at this point?
As far as I'm concerned, it is a published work. It's probably never going to be something that you'll find on the Mac App Store, but as an application, it's pretty polished and it is being maintained. Ready for general consumption. It's free.
Why?
I don't know. I've actually gotten more donations. Like 90% of the stuff I create, I give away for free. With the hope that people will send donations. And I've actually gotten more donations for Bunch than I ever got for NVAlt. And NVAlt has upwards of 750,000 downloads. And I've gotten more donations from half a year of Bunch being out than I ever did from NVAlt.
So that's interesting. Do you think that has to do with the pandemic? Do you think it has to do with people recognizing the value of what you're doing, or just getting used to a different model?
I don't know. I will say my sales for Mark, the currently the only commercial application I have on the App Store, those sales went up when lockdown happened, and I don't have a good explanation for why. But I do think that there has been an effect from everyone staying home more, maybe being on their Macs more, using third-party software more. Not sure.
Because this afternoon I talked to a software vendor for a future edition of MacVoices that will come out, and they were saying sort of the same thing. They were saying that their sales had almost doubled, and then after that peak, then it dropped down, but it still was significantly higher than it had been pre-lockdown.
Yeah, I saw the same. Yeah, well, everyone else was losing their jobs. I was just suddenly making more money doing the exact same thing.
Well, that gives me hope. And by the way, Brittany, David, jump in here anytime.
Yeah.
But that gives me hope for this particular model. We've talked about subscriptions here on MacVoices, and we talk about the one one payment things and upgrade pricing and all those things. There's so many different models out there trying to figure out which one is good, which one is right, or which ones are right for what kind of app. This edition of MacVoices is supported by Linode. You can build it on Linode. Building and maintaining a web presence can be a complicated undertaking. And don't you need a little less complication in your life? Why not start by simplifying your cloud infrastructure with Linode's Linux virtual machines? Linode has 11 global data centers and provides 24/7, 365 human support with no restrictive tiers or frustrating handoffs, no matter what plan you have. MacVoices viewers and listeners can get started with a free $100 credit on Linode and then use it for shared or dedicated instances, S3 compatible object storage, managed Kubernetes, and more. Get all the details and sign up for your free account right now at linode.com/MacVoices. To start with Linode, whether it's setting up your first website or moving an existing server to its new home. That's linode.com/MacVoices. Again, linode.com/MacVoices for $100 free credit to get started with your new server. Thanks to Linode for their support of MacVoices.
Yeah, can we talk about that?
Sure.
What wisdom have you gained? So here's the thing. I have NV Ultra, which is the kind of replacement for NV Alt that Fletcher, Penny, and I are working on. A plain text note-taking app based on multi-markdown. And releases impending. And we want, like Fletcher and I both pretty morally opposed to the idea of subscriptions. But we want to be able to offer free trials, and we want to be able to offer paid upgrades and be able to make money off our work. And the more we batted it back and forth, the more we realize we probably are going to have to release it as a subscription app. And while that's distasteful to both of us, it's kind of the only avenue that Apple seems to offer if you want to have both like paid free trials and paid upgrades.
If it's in the App Store, you mean?
Yeah. Yeah. So what wisdom have you gained from these conversations you've had?
Wow. I'm not sure wisdom as much as a business person. I'm intrigued by different people trying different things and different models. My personal feeling, and I've said this a million times, but I'll say it a million and one, that if it's an app, for me, if it's an app that I use daily, weekly, frequently, and then I think it's a candidate subscription. If it's an app that needs to be constantly updated, monitored, and all that, like let's say 1Password, then absolutely, I think it's a candidate for that. TextExpander is another one for two reasons. First of all, I use that more like on an hourly basis. But second, they have Smile has done such a great job of continually upgrading and adding features. I mean, on like clockwork, regularly they bring out new things and they keep it functioning. And so that's a candidate. The one-time use things, or the things that I might use, once or twice a year, I struggle with some of those.
Sure. Yeah.
In fact, pardon me, go ahead.
Our hope is that people, and the reason we want to give people a free trial is so that they do realize it's a daily use thing for them. Like for me, the app is open in between everything I do. It's where everything kind of collects. And I talked to Greg Pierce, who does drafts, who went to subscription over the last couple of years. And I think NV Ultra fits into about the same niche as drafts does. And so based on what you're saying, I think it makes sense, especially like we're only talking $3-4 a month at like the high end for our subscription price. I think if I were a user, I would accept it. I think I would say, can I just buy it? And when they said no, I'd say, okay, I'll give you $4 a month. It's TextExpander, I agree, makes perfect sense as a subscription app, especially with all the syncing and everything that they do now. I think NV Ultra, for me, I use it almost as much as TextExpander.
Last question is, as far as Mark II, I see you have it as you also have the in-app purchase. Do you tend to see people going and adding the spell check feature for it?
Where does it say that?
Well, I'm looking in the app now. It says that there's an in-app purchase of...
You're out of date.
Am I? I'm looking in the App Store.
Really?
Yeah.
I removed that in-app purchase about a year ago and just made it free for everybody because nobody was paying the extra for this.
Yeah, it's still there.
Huh. I'll have to check on that.
Yeah. Okay. Then never mind then.
Note to self.
I guess that answers my question. Yeah. It was useless.
I poured months of time into adding spell check to something that really seemed like it should have had spell check to begin with, but the way Mac OS, you can't use the system spell check on a web view, which is what your Markdown preview is. So I had to build this whole system that like scrapes the web page, sends the text to the application, gets it spell checked, gets a JSON blob back, figures out where the errors were, highlights them. It was a whole thing. And I thought, okay, so this is going to be great for all of the people that have paid for Marked already, but I would love to charge an upgrade price for it. So I tried the in-app purchase approach.
Got it.
And it didn't make any significant sales for me.
Failed miserably.
Brittany, where do you stand on subscriptions, purchase, the things we've been talking about?
How much time do you have? I have so many feels about subscriptions. I mean, on the one hand, I love my developers and it is one of those places where I am so upset with Apple for encouraging and making it nigh impossible to do anything else. Not doing the built-in free trials still. I have concerns that subscriptions are bad for society, and this is nothing against you, Brett. Like, I'm sitting here thinking, like, can I do that? Because there's exceptions. I don't do subscriptions, but guess what? I can't live without drafts. He had me. TextExpander didn't make that, so I'm still using the old version and mostly switching to keyboard replacements where possible. I can't do the fancy things, but mostly I don't use it as much because it wasn't that great on iOS anyway. Because you had to switch over or use one that had it built in. And so I stopped using it as much because that didn't make sense for me. Also, a thing about upgrades, which increasingly people are struggling with emotionally, and I don't even know what to do with that. But Chuck, you mentioned that TextExpander had updates. I have no idea, because what they would do before when they had upgrades is they'd say, hey, like, go around and tell everybody, what are all the new features? And they don't do that anymore. So I don't even know what they are. As far as I know, I'm missing nothing because I never followed them. But I was paying, like, every time they had a paid upgrade, I was paying for it. I don't know.
Well, that's interesting. And so that right there may be a lesson to be learned. I'm pretty sure, TextExpander and, Smile in general for TextExpander and PDFpen are pretty good about, I'm receiving the updates. I'm receiving the emails.
Yeah.
So,
I don't let emails marketing in my inbox.
Well, then how can you complain about
ADHD?
not knowing what's happening?
Yeah, well,
no, but they used to do rounds on podcasts, which I've told Chuck before. If you don't advertise on a podcast or do an interview, I don't know you exist.
That's a thing about subscription models, though, is it removes this idea of the big version release. Like, you're constantly releasing a feature here and a feature there, and you don't generally have this big rollout of here's the whole rewrite and the new interface, and these things just kind of creep in one at a time. You could pile them up and create a changelog and go out to all the podcasts and talk about it, but you no longer have this is version 2.0. You just have this is version 1.5.273.
Right. And honestly, I am so sure that there are so many things in drafts that are new that I am not taking advantage of because an update comes and I don't really have time to dig into each one. And so I probably am missing out on stuff that I could be using.
Okay, so this brings up an interesting point. I think that we have a communication issue. And Brittany, I know you're only partially jesting about the ADHD thing, but I'm not a lot better. That emails come in my inbox, and they go to, in my case, I'm using SaneBox, and so they go to my Sane Later folder, and 3 weeks later, I'm digging through, and it's like, oh shoot, I wish I'd known that. And so because we get flooded with all the junk, and we don't always get the information we need. But on the other, Zoom is a good example, and we're using Zoom to record this. And Zoom is constantly right now adding and tweaking and changing things. And once in a while, I'll see something on the Mac web about, Zoom did this or Zoom did that to improve privacy or secure the platform. And it's like, well, I didn't know that. I didn't see any notes about it. And I am looking for those notes in my email. So communication, and I don't know. If you had your choice, how else would you have them communicate with you? Just drafts to Brittany.
Drafts to Brittany.
Just drafts to Brittany.
And you know what part of it is I do prefer to do things in a big chunk. Like this was a thing that would happen is, oh, hey, big release for iOS, not anymore, but like this other thing. Awesome. I'm going to sit down and learn all the things, but I can't like make that mental appointment with myself so regularly as when a new thing comes out. And so, but there's never like, this is the time to do it. Oh, right. I'm paying for the upgrade. I'm going to learn the new things. And then that was a thing I did. But I can't disagree that we have somehow morphed our society into one that has issues with upgrades, even though they usually end up costing them less than the subscription. That is a bigger problem with lots of causes that I don't know if I can solve. But yeah, I didn't have like I'm going to do this thing. I'm sitting down, I get a new iPhone. I'm going to play with all the new features. I have iOS 14. I'm going to play with all the new features. I'm not going to do that every 2 weeks for all the apps I find interesting.
I don't know how to help you.
I don't know either. That was sort of a side thing. I'm more concerned about the tracking subscriptions and like adding things to my task list that I need to like somehow keep track of, and that they're a higher cognitive load to have subscriptions than an upgrade. That's my main.
But it brings up the communication issue, but it also brings up a bit of a promotion issue. That if Brett wants to keep his subscription going, he's got to find a way to make sure that people know that those features are actually being rolled out to them, and it's just not something that.
But that's the upside and the downside. Once people are on, they usually stay unless they have a really good reason not to keep subscribing. That's the good and the bad. But at the same time, Brett doesn't have a marketing team.
I do.
Like do you?
This guy.
That guy. But somebody to put together, these are our updates, we're putting it out. Like even smaller companies that are more than one person have somebody to do that and to like announce all the new features. But yeah, I've said to people before, like, I'm sure TextExpander has something new. I don't know what it is.
TextExpander as a blogger, TextExpander regularly, they sponsor my blog, and so they once a month, every other month, it's a TextExpander post. They will announce kind of the latest new features in TextExpander, and then PDFpen on the other months. I guess as a result, I'm always up to date on what's new in Smile products. But I feel like that's how I know they sponsor a whole series of blogs and podcasts, and I feel like that's how they get the information out about their new features.
Potentially, but I usually here's all the great things you can do with TextExpander, and they're exactly the same things I can do.
Yeah.
And they don't usually, I have not heard very many sponsor spots where they talked about the new things, because it
falls to people like me to talk about the really cool stuff that TextExpander can do. It's part of the reason they sponsor me is because I was always doing crazy cool stuff with TextExpander.
Brett Terpstra.
and I will admit that I have failed at that as of the last year or two. I have not been putting out crazy new TextExpander stuff. But I feel like they do their goal with the amount of sponsorships that they do in the Mac blogging community is to get that information out there. And it may be my fault and others like me if that particular plan isn't working.
And I don't know. I'm the weirdo here, and I know that. I do try to keep my reading on the internet to a minimum because it's a rabbit hole and it's dangerous and I have work to do. So that's why podcasts, because I can physically be doing something else. Not that some podcasts don't still send me down a rabbit hole of links. It happens, but at least it's somewhat more targeted than like infinite clicking on the internet. And so, yeah, if they're all in blog posts, then I would be missing it.
Yeah.
Well, and it's and Brett, I may be right there guilty too, because full disclosure, Smile helps sponsor MacVoices as well, and maybe I don't do a good enough job in the spots of pointing out new features or the features that apply only to a subset of users. I think there's this tendency, and I know I'm probably guilty of it, of saying, hey, here are the easy things that you can benefit from, and not this very deeper, I should say, use case about how to customize a particular form for, I don't know, an order form. I know it can be done, but I don't push that idea because not everybody are creating order forms. But everybody can use a snippet that has their name or their phone number or their address. So that's the thing you sort of push.
Because they're doing it so regularly, though, and this is a marketing thing, I really think they should focus on one feature. They're on my blog 6 times a year for TextExpander. They could break out and really focus on one feature or one area of features in each post instead of trying to do the whole sales pitch every time. They could really make it about the new features, because
especially on yours,
you have
who's going to your website that's not a giant nerd,
right? And you have to assume that
right.
I say this with love.
They've seen these ads before, right? They've seen the TextExpander spots. They already kind of know what it does, but they need the reason why they would be willing to pay a subscription fee. And I should talk to they have a new person writing the spots in the reads. I'll talk to her about that. That actually makes a lot of sense. We've solved the problem.
Well, and I think maybe we have, or at least we've started to solve a problem, and we've used. Unfortunately, they weren't a willing participant. we just sort of started with them. But I think anybody that has a subscription service, no, not at all, Brittany. I think you've pointed out maybe something for them and for us, because I live and die by TextExpander. I love TextExpander, and so I want people to use it. And there are other services that I want people to use because I think they are that good. And whether they sponsor MacVoices or not, that's not the point. The point is that this is a really terrific utility. Seriously, that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to Brett about Bunch, because this sounds like something that could be super useful for so many people if they just take a little bit of time to learn, A, how to do it, and B, what it does. Our featured guest, Brett Terpstra, and the whole crew will be back in the next edition of MacVoices to continue our discussion of subscription models and a whole lot more. That's the great thing about these live shows. You never know what you're going to get. Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you MacVoices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.